The San Francisco 49ers did not draft a tight end, but got a priority free agent in Khalil Dinkins out of Penn State. But is Kyle Shanahan bucking the new tight end trend around the NFL? On today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We're talking tight ends today, and all the rage around the NFL world is tight ends this offseason. And today, the conversation picked up because David Njoku signed a free agent contract with Mike McDaniel's Los Angeles Chargers. And we've been planning to break down some undrafted free agents as the 49ers have signed after the draft. And we're still watching some of these guys, but we're going to start with the tight end and talk about the 49ers tight end group and Kyle Shanahan this week or last week with Rich Eisen talking about a potential George Kittle return and what that means for the 49ers, where the 49ers are after not drafting a tight end. And Croc, in a record year, in a super deep tight end class, the most tight ends drafted in the last 24 years, 25 drafts now, I think it was, since 2002. The most tight ends drafted in a quarter century. The Rams kind of starting this thing where they're going heavy 13 personnel. Everybody all of a sudden wants a bunch of tight ends on the field, and the 49ers were the only team that didn't draft it. A lot of teams drafted 2 tight ends in this class. Croc, what do you make of it? What do you make of Kyle Shanahan sort of bowing out and not adopting this new tight end trend around the NFL with his own superstar tight end who's coming off an Achilles injury?
I think everybody knows that the NFL is a copycat league, but a lot of people copy what Kyle Shanahan does. So I think if other people are going to a lot of this 13 personnel, I think Kyle Shanahan is like, if we get there, we get there, but that's not going to be the reason why our offense is good. We're going to do the things that we do, and we're going to do those things well. So he hasn't adopted that look yet. I think when you look at the 49ers and the way their tight end room is constructed, it does not look like that's in his plans, at least for the near future, this upcoming season.
I was curious. So I went all the way back to 2002, which was the last time there was this many tight ends that were drafted. There was 3 first-round tight ends in 2002. We're going all the way back to the Jeremy Shockey draft. Jeremy Shockey was the 14th pick by the Giants. Dan Graham was, and this was kind of the beginning of the 2 tight end era for the New England Patriots. They were kind of early in on this and did the multi-tight end thing for a long time. It didn't really catch on around the league. For some reason, the Rams go to 3 tight end sets one year, and now everybody in the league is like, oh, that's a great idea. We're going to jump all over that and start drafting tight ends crazy higher than we ever have before. And so that was Shockey, Dan Graham, and do you remember Jeremy Stevens, the big athletic tight end out of the University of Washington that was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks? So 3 first-rounders that year. Doug Jolly, Justin Peel. I love these names, man. I haven't thought of some of these players in a long time. Robert Royal. It wasn't that great of a class for how many tight ends were selected in this draft. And the only other year that was comparable was 2006. And this one blows my mind, Croc, because this was the Vernon Davis draft. Vernon Davis out of Maryland was drafted number 6 overall. And remember, when he signed his rookie deal, he was like the highest paid tight end in the NFL instantly with the old structure of how rookies were paid. There wasn't as many tight ends drafted that year, but because Vernon Davis went so high, and another tight end, Marcedes Lewis, who was still playing last year, Croc.
Crazy.
Lewis is about to turn 42 years old. We're going to bring up his name when we talk free agents because he's still out there and available, and he was still playing last year. Can you believe that? From the Vernon Davis draft 20 years ago. That is madness. He was the 28th pick in the first round. Anthony Fasano was in this draft. Remember Leonard Pope, huge tight end out of Georgia. I think it was like 6'8" or something like that. Owen Daniels with the Texans was pretty good for a while. Garrett Mills. So that was the class of 2006. And since then, we haven't really sniffed anything close to what we've seen here in the 2026 NFL draft, where there was 22 tight ends selected, Croc. There was Kenyon Sadiq in the first round. There was 3 second-round tight ends. After Eli Stowers to the Eagles in the second round, I think people started to really get surprised about how high these these players were going. 4 second-round tight ends with Borkature really kicked it off with the Jaguars. People are going, oh, my God. Then Marlon Klein to the Texans. Max Clare went to the Los Angeles Rams. And so, Sam Roush in the 3rd round with Oscar Delp, who was really popular in mock drafts to the 49ers, definitely didn't get close to that 4th round area. But the Niners didn't draft any of these 22 tight ends, even though it seems like almost every other team got one, and some teams got 2 tight ends in this class. And I thought for sure tight end was a position, and we talked about it after the draft, that was the one shocking development, that the 49ers didn't attack tight end in the NFL draft as deep as it was, collecting some more picks. There were 7 tight ends taken in the 5th round where the 49ers had a couple of draft picks. So I know that Kyle Shanahan after the draft talked to Rich Eisen and said kind of a classic Shanahan quote, because you can't really bank on what he says here, but that George Kittle, coming off his Achilles injury that happened in January, by the way, has a chance, quote, to play in week 1 versus the Rams in Australia. So do we believe that George Kittle is going to be coming all the way back and be ready to play week 1? Kyle Shanahan says he has a chance. And if George Kittle's not ready or not 100% or not a full-time player, if he does return to the field and maybe some limited action, the 49ers have one of the weakest tight end groups in the entire NFL, especially after this.
Yeah, you're going to have to rely a lot on Tonges. And I would say Tonges did well last year when called upon. And what I mean by well, was he a guy that was going to break the game open? And that's not what he was, but he was reliable. And I think for a coach, I think Kyle Shanahan, are you going to be in the spot I need you to be when you're supposed to be there? And are you going to catch the ball when it's thrown to you? And I thought Tonges did a really good job of just doing that. They weren't going to build a game plan around him. And the opposing teams probably weren't going to, account for him too much. But he did what he was supposed to do. And I think that meant something to Kyle Shanahan. And probably heading into this season, there could have been somebody he liked. Let's say Kenyon Sadiq. Kenyon Sadiq fell to the Niners when Kyle been like, hey, we want to draft this guy because we see how we can utilize him. Oh, he's not there. Then, all right, we're not really too messed up about taking any of these other tight ends. So it is interesting when you look at this room, because who can you count on, especially if you want to go more 13 personnel? Do you count Kyle Juszczyk in those numbers?
Yeah, and you know who we could have counted in those numbers previously is Jauan Jennings, right? The guy that I've been talking about for years. Kyle Shanahan treated him like a move tight end when he was on the field, even as much as a wide receiver before there was injuries, and he was forced to be like a starting wide receiver. But he was that number 3 tight end you could put on the field and had numbers in the run game. And so you could even consider him as a part of that group. And so you wonder if maybe Dejon Stribling is kind of that new guy where they think they can move him around and get an edge in the blocking game when they do have more wide receivers on the field. But we kind of joked about it after the draft that the rest of the league is going to 3 tight end sets, and the 49ers look like they're going to shift to 4 wide. So maybe Kyle is zigging while everybody else is zagging, or more likely they're maybe too optimistic potentially about George Kittle's return, and they've got the same group of tight ends returning from last year. That's Jake Tonges and Luke Farrell, who was not nearly as good of a blocker as he was billed to come in and be that wide tight end, and then Brayden Willis as well, who I think is going to be fighting for a roster spot with the guy that we're going to talk about that went undrafted. The 49ers signed and gave a little bit of money to as a signing bonus to get him in out of Penn State, Khalil Dinkins.
Well, I think what the question too is, what advantage does the 3 tight ends give you over whatever personnel grouping you really like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, does it add any versatility, or am I more versatile having George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk, and Stribling on the field? Because it's not 3 tight ends, but it's 3 guys that can block their butt off, but now I can still threaten you in more areas. And when I have that, receiver on the field, now you have to be, have a different personnel in the game. So if I'm in, some type of 21 personnel or, something like that, then you have to match that with your personnel defensively. And now having a guy like Stribling who can block but also run routes, maybe that just makes him more multiple with his play calling.
And I think Kyle Shanahan's not one to chase trends, right? When everyone else was spreading things out, he stayed with the fullback and was running 21 personnel. He wants to run his offense the way he runs his offense. And now everyone goes to 3 tight ends. He's going to keep 21 personnel, and he's going to run his offense the way he runs his offense. And he's going to look for ways to beat defenses game plan wise, and not necessarily chase the latest trends that are out there. I do think that tight ends it's kind of become a reckoning, I think, with tight ends who became so underrated around the NFL for how much they cost, because I think they're much more valuable than that. You think of a guy who just signed a free agent contract, and we're going to talk about some free agents that are available to the 49ers if they decide they want to go that route, if it looks like in the summertime that George Kittle's not going to be ready for training camp. And David Njoku is a guy that, you don't think of him as a world-beating tight end, but this is a guy that can line up, can block you, and can make plays in the passing game. Like the tight ends are a pretty valuable resource for what they can give you in the run and pass game. And I think that's why Sean McVay and other coaches are looking at this and being like, this is a very cheap way for us to have a guy who can run the football, especially with boxes and defenders in the front 7 getting lighter and lighter. And you want to have a big nickel on the field and play nickel all the time. Okay, well, we've got a bunch of tight ends and we've got jumbo personnel to run against you, but we can still throw the ball to any of these guys. So it's fascinating that that's the direction the league's going. And the money that you're spending for a guy like George Kittle, what he brings in offense, is crazy that he's making a fraction of what some second-tier wide receivers are making.
Yeah. And that's the part right there where maybe that's the edge. Getting guys who are cheaper but can do things similarly, but also can block. So now he's even more versatile.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think if you're going to do that, George Kittle, I think, is a great combination of both. Ideally, you would like someone that is a tight end, but maybe a little bit more receiver heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's truly going to give you that, because he's still a big body.
Yeah,
he's still going to be able to block, but you can't have a nickel defensive back out there because he's going to drive that guy out of the play. So then you have a linebacker, but he can beat him when it comes to coverage ability. So I think that's where do the 49ers have that true pass catching tight end that has, running ability in a way that it really gives you an edge. And I don't know if that's Tonges.
Yeah, and if the Niners go 22 personnel with Juszczyk on the field and you go Kittle and Tonges, how's that any different from a team that's going 3 tight ends? Right? But let's talk about the 49ers' newest tight end. They didn't draft one, but they give the most money that they gave to anybody this year as an undrafted free agent as a signing bonus to bring in Penn State's Khalil Dinkins. His scouting report, can he stick on the San Francisco 49ers 53-man roster? Is he one of the 49ers 3 tight end sets in 2026? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. And when the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So spend less time searching, more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast. That is Indeed.com/podcast right now, and support us by saying that you heard about Indeed here. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Let's talk undrafted free agent tight end Khalil Dinkins. Croc. He is 6'4", 251 pounds. He is a block first tight end. That's the way he was used. A traditional Y tight end, but then there's times when he would be moved out and be somewhat of an asset in the passing game. Although he only caught 14 passes last year for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns. He was still an honorable mention All Big Ten player though. But what's interesting is in 2024, the year before his senior year at Penn State had just a superstar tight end, Tyler Warren, that was drafted in the first round of last year's NFL draft. And you thought, okay, well, Khalil Dinkins the next year is going to have a big role, right? Nope. Exactly the same amount of production. He was used exactly the same in 2025 as he was the year prior, 2024. So there was 100 extra targets to go around. None of them went to Khalil Dinkins because he had the exact same number of catches. 14 catches for 122 and 2 touchdowns in 2024, and then 14 catches again the next season, last year, 2025, for 167 yards. A few more yards, got down the seam a little bit further on some of those catches, and 2 touchdowns again in 2025. So a block first tight end, but some athleticism, Croc. And I mentioned the seam. He can get down the seam a little bit. 4.72 40 time is nothing to scoff at. I don't think he's a run whip routes on third down type of a tight end, but I think he is a capable receiver, even though he was not utilized hardly at all as a receiver at Penn State.
Yeah, he definitely was a block first guy. And just watching his usage and where they had him line up most of the time, initially I was watching, I was like, it's not really like a move tight end. But then the more you watch, you see him kind of move out and spread out, and they ran some crossers with him. I think the way that they looked to potentially get him the ball in the air was all through concepts, as opposed to asking him to beat guys man to man. They were going to try to scheme him. All right, we got this guy. He has a certain level of ability. He has a big frame, big size. If we get him to do this, he could potentially put a defensive back on his backs, on the backside of him, and then he can go up, shield them away, and make a catch. Whether it's tight coverage or if it's wide open because they dropped coverage. So when they were going to throw the ball to him, they asked him to do that as opposed to being a true man beater. But in the run game, he was there, and they did a lot of different things with him, whether it was having him as an inline guy. I saw him do some wide pulling type stuff with some they had the GY counter type run plays in there, and he would always get to a spot. I think there were a few times I could see where he could be a little bit more aggressive on contact. But overall, he was a guy that when you're thinking about his skill set and how to potentially use it, I like it. Now, making him the highest paid undrafted rookie free agent, I don't know if I saw that. But the last time they made a guy one of the highest paid undrafted free agent, was it Cannon? You remember him?
Who?
Cannon. I think he was out of Baylor. He was a receiver.
Oh, KD.
He didn't make it.
I do remember KD Cannon. Didn't make it at all. Do you remember who was the Florida State corner? There was the highly touted guy, and then it was
McFadden.
It was McFadden. Tarvarius McFadden?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was the big time get in undrafted free agency, but it was a different corner that made the squad that year.
Emmanuel Mosley,
yeah. Beat him out.
I like the thoughts of getting a guy like him with his ability. Not trying, we don't know everything on this show.
Right.
But I feel like having so many options, it's like there wasn't someone that you could find in the weeds somewhere, or maybe even find like a former basketball player.
God, my guy, Dallin Bentley from Utah, I would have been cool if the 49ers used one of the 4th round picks on him. He went late. He was the 7th round pick. He was the second tight end that Sean Payton and the Broncos drafted. The dude ran a 4.59, similar profile, but much more athletic than Dinkins. Was a good blocker, was used a lot as a blocker throughout his career, but can move him around and was more of an asset as a pass catcher, more athletic player. He nearly got out of the draft to be able to sign as an undrafted free agent. Dinkins might be a little better blocker than, and I think that's what the 49ers were looking for clearly, is that they didn't go find some undersized, fast, bulked up wide receiver tight end. They got a guy, and look, he's not oversized.
The Evan Ingrams of the world.
Yeah. And he wasn't drafted because he's for like a block first Y inline type of a tight end that doesn't have much of receiving production. It's not like he's 6'5", 270, right? He's not huge. He's 6'4", 250, which is fine size. It's solid, but he's not oversized guy. And so I think powerful players he can't quite dominate in the run game against the most powerful defensive ends. And I think you saw a little bit of that on tape, but you did see him give a lot of effort. He's a really good blocker, can get out on the move and do a lot of things. And I'm sure that's what the 49ers were looking for, is someone to push Luke Farrell as much as anybody, because Luke Farrell, I think, was a big disappointment as a free agent signee last year. He's still under contract with the 49ers, but I think that's why they wanted, especially if Kittle's going to be out, they wanted to make sure they had someone that could line up and block people. And that's what Khalil Dinkins is going to be. And he can sneak down the seam or catch the ball on a crosser. I don't think he's going to route anybody up at the next level, because he wasn't really doing it in college either. But interesting player, I think, not only because the money he got as a signing bonus, but I think there's enough there. 4.7 speed. You can see him get up and move down the field a little bit. He's not, again, in short areas, not super quick or anything, but he's got enough athleticism, long arms, solid size, and he'll block you. I think he's got as good a chance as anybody in recent years as an undrafted free agent to stick. So if I had to project the roster right now, I think he might get one of those roster spots over someone like Brayden Willis. Can he play special teams is a big question.
Yeah, right. And he's going to have to make this squad.
Right.
There's been guys on this roster. Let me see if he's still hanging around. He is still hanging around. Brayden Willis. So he was kind of that undersized, but I could be a receiver, and I could be an H-back type guy. I'm curious to see, kind of what happens with his development. Does he not let someone beat him out? Because Brayden Willis is a guy who really should be able to do a lot of things. And we've talked about it, man. He, as a rookie, found his way playing in the Super Bowl. And one of the few guys from that class that still kind of around and doing some things.
I'm looking, I think. Yeah, his father was also undrafted in the 2000 draft, played minor league football before signing with the New York Giants in 2002. So that big 2002 class, I guess, Father Dinkins, Darnell Dinkins, was part of that, former NFL
Darnell Dinkins, that sounds familiar too.
So he wasn't drafted, ended up carving out an 8-year NFL career with the New York Giants, Baltimore Ravens, Cleveland Browns, and New Orleans Saints. Won a Super Bowl in his final NFL season. So his last game was winning a Super Bowl with the New Orleans Saints, it looks like. So there you go. Darnell Dinkins. That kind of rolls off the tongue, right? I feel like
the names, it rolls off the tongue so well. It kind of, the name sounds a lot like very familiar.
Yeah. I'm looking, I went to the Beast here and I found that nice little story. I'm glad I did, because I was trying to see if it mentioned anything about him playing teams and special teams, and I didn't look at any of that tape for Penn State. But I mean, size and athleticism wise, you'd think he has an opportunity to stick, because he has both size and athleticism over Brayden Willis. And I think Brayden Willis, if I remember correctly, was a gold helmet guy back in the day, right? So I'm sure the 49ers like having him around, but I think there's a roster spot up for grabs, because I like Tonges. He's a number 2, number 3 tight end. And then and more of a move guy than an inline powerful blocker. There's an opportunity for potentially another player in there, I think, because Farrell, I don't know how much is guaranteed on his contract, and Brayden Willis, those jobs are up for grabs in the very near future. And who knows, maybe as they break camp. So we'll find out. I do like Khil Dinkins. I think it's a nice pickup in undrafted free agency.
So far, Brayden Willis, for his career as a 49er, 3 targets, 0 catches.
There you go. So, yeah, he's not doing much on offense for the 49ers at all. He is and I thought Brayden Willis had an opportunity to be like more H-back, fullback, and a big-time player, potentially in a post. And I wonder if the 49ers had that plan when last offseason they let go of Juice for a little while before bringing him back. They got to figure out how that's going to work if Juszczyk, because he's not young anymore, Croc. And so we might not have that guy that we can say, oh, he's kind of a borderline tight end too. So don't forget fullback as a need at some point in the near future for the San Francisco 49ers, as well as some more talent in the tight end room with an aging, coming off an Achilles injury, George Kittle. And I know he's going to still get after it and battle and do everything he can to get back. But week 1 seems extremely optimistic for George Kittle.
It does. Yeah, it does.
Let's talk free agent tight ends. Could the 49ers bring in anybody? They won't be bringing in David Njoku, who just signed with the Los Angeles Chargers. Maybe Marcedes Lewis next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by Game Time. We can stream anything these days. Order food in minutes, do everything from our phones, and somehow buying tickets to live events still feels way harder than it should be. Long lines, virtual lines, confusing checkout, prices jumping at the last second. Shouldn't be waiting in lines in the virtual world, right? And it shouldn't be that complicated. So that's where Game Time comes in. It gives the advantage back to the fans, makes getting tickets fast and simple. You can see the full price up front. I love that feature. No surprise fees at checkouts, and zone deals as well, where you pick the section and there's a zone deal in a couple of taps to find an even better deal at the stadium or at a concert or a comedy show, whatever event you are looking for. Quick and easy, and it takes the guesswork out of buying tickets to every type of event. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that is code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. David Njoku got I'm not surprised the 49ers are going to wait and probably get the most, bargain basement player they can. If they decide they're going to do that at tight end, they probably want to see OTAs, make sure they go through the whole process in the offseason in June and wait to see before reporting to camp where George Kittle is before they sign a player and hopefully get a sweetheart of a very cheap 1-year deal for one of the names I'm about to mention. David Njoku's not going to be one of them. He got a deal worth up to $8 million. Don't know how much of that $8 million is real money and how much he's actually going to get. But it's interesting that after leaving Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel was second in 2 tight end personnel usage last year, Croc. And I assume that's second only to the Los Angeles Rams. So a couple of former Kyle Shanahan underlings and Mike Shanahan underlings are using tight ends quite a bit. And Kyle Shanahan didn't draft one. So that's fascinating. So Mike McDaniel adding David Njoku to the mix there in that Chargers offense. And here is the list of tight ends available. Marcedes Lewis, about to turn 42 years old, Croc. 19 years of service. Can he get his 20th year of service? According to Spotrac, his market value is only about $1.8 million. So he would probably fit the bill price-wise for the 49ers. And he's been an inline tight end. So who knows? He would make some of the 49ers, including their star left tackle, I think, in Trent Williams, feel very youthful, signing a 42-year-old. So he'd fit right into the San Francisco 49ers current roster build with some of the old rookies.
Does he fit in with the Cabo clique?
You know what, man? 19-year NFL veteran. You know how many millions of dollars Marcedes Lewis has made? I think he's a Cabo clique guy through and through. Went to UCLA. He loves him some sunshine, right?
I was a big fan of his coming out of college and watching him. And he had Maurice Jones-Drew over there. Both of those guys coming from UCLA, playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay, just throw a guess out there. Marcedes Lewis career earnings.
Well, he's a tight end. But he's played 20 years.
19 years. This would be the 20th year if he signs. I think he missed the year with an
78 million.
Pretty close. $65.5 million. Yeah.
Seems like it should be more, though, huh?
I was thinking it was going to be even higher than that. Yeah. Some guys are making near that per year these days. But he never got paid big money, was never a big-time receiver producer, even in his best years. Played a long time for the Jaguars for over a decade. Then Packers, Bears, and was with he's not going to go back to the Broncos. They drafted 2 tight ends, the Denver Broncos did, and he played last season. So
he got paid less to live in Florida for a lot of years where they don't have state taxes.
That's true. That's very true. He missed 1 full season with an ACL, so that's why he's 1 year off of that 20 years, even though he's been in the league for 20 years. 1 year he didn't play.
Gotcha.
So he's only accrued 19 seasons. $65 million career earnings. Not bad. Not bad work if you can get it. He might want to throw another 1.8 mil on there. Should the 49ers come calling for Marcedes Lewis? Or how about, I think the biggest name out there right now is probably Jonnu Smith, right, Croc? But he's a little bit more of the move variety. And listening to my guy, Matt Williamson, who covers the Steelers, and I talk to him every day doing the NFL Six Pack podcast here on the Locked On Network. I don't think that's the guy you want to drop $7 million on. That's the vibe I get. I think David Njoku was the prize. That's why he signed now, and a team was willing to give him money now and not wait, because I think there's a big drop off after him.
Well, what about Darren Waller?
Well,
I know he's old, but if you're just saying, hey, come in for 1 year and kind of be something that the 49ers don't quite have, but allow you to do the, 13 personnel type stuff, I think he's kind of the perfect guy for that. Well, because he's kind of like a big, oversized receiver, but still has the physicality to block, but is a terrific red zone threat. I mean, goal line. This is a guy that scored 6 touchdowns last year, coming back late, just off the street. Now, again, he's older. He'll turn, I believe he turns 34 at some point this year, but we're just talking about for one season.
And maybe it's because stylistically Mike McDaniel wanted a certain thing, but Mike McDaniel just coached him with the Miami Dolphins and went a different direction at tight end. Even though he had an opening, he could have gotten Darren Waller for a lot cheaper. So I think that probably tells you how he feels about him. Different style of tight end. He's more the move, former wide receiver type, but he can block and he can do some inline things as well. He'd be an interesting player because 33 is pretty darn young, almost 34. All these guys are over 30 years old. I mean, tight ends can play for a while. Jonnu Smith is going to be turned 31 this year. Will Dissly is going to turn 30 this year. Darren Waller's turning 34. Zach Ertz is he's 35 and a half right now, so he'll turn 36 at some point during the season. Zach Ertz is actually an interesting name, Croc.
Ertz,
former Stanford.
He is, he's another guy that I feel can fit a specific role of more of a 13 personnel kind of thing going on. But if Kyle's not going to go that route, then I don't know. But the 49ers, they're in a tough position because you obviously have George Kittle, so you don't want to pour a whole bunch of resources into the tight end position, but you also don't want to have to rush George Kittle back, and you want to feel comfortable about who's out there. And maybe this is the 49ers telling us they feel very comfortable with Jake Tonges.
Yeah. I can see why they would like Jake Tonges, but I guess you could probably talk me into Jake Tonges as your number one tight end. Then you have Luke Farrell and some other bodies that are the backup tight ends to start the year, even if it's just like a month, because you're getting George Kittle back at some point. If you do know that, and he's rehabbing well, but just not ready for week 1, and you still have your not first round, early second round wide receiver, right? And that's your 4th receiver coming into camp in Dejon Stribling, because you have Mike Evans and you have Christian Kirk that you brought in as well to work out of the slot. And obviously you have Ricky Pearsall. And so if all those guys are healthy and Kyle Juszczyk's healthy and Christian McCaffrey's healthy, maybe you don't need to lean on your tight ends as much. Are you going to get enough in the blocking game would be my question there, because George Kittle brings a lot there. And if you look at the 49ers yards per carry last year, not having George Kittle around might be as big a part of any of it.
When he came back, I felt like the run game started to pick up and got a little bit better towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
Didn't help the 49ers in the playoffs against Seattle.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing with George Kittle is he was hurt on multiple occasions last year, and the injuries are starting to stack up with him. Can you even if he's back, can you rely on him?
George Kittle, he didn't play against Seattle. Huh? He got hurt.
He got hurt week 1.
Philadelphia in the playoffs. Didn't he rupture his Achilles against Philly?
Yes, yeah. So So let me double check. Yeah, George Kittle got hurt in the first quarter after scoring a touchdown in week 1, right? All right, George Kittle, game log. Here we go. Seattle Seahawks, he had 4 catches on 4 targets and a touchdown week 1, got hurt in Seattle, came back a month and a half later. October 19th against the Atlanta Falcons was his return game. Only got 2 targets in that game, and then ramped up against the Houston Texans in that loss, had a touchdown catch, and then he got hurt in the Last game he played was Seattle, January 3rd. The regular season finale Seattle game. Did not play. No, I think, you're right. Yeah, he did.
He played against Philly.
Yeah, the playoffs were separate up here. Yeah, so he did get hurt in the Philly game. Did not play against the Seattle Seahawks the second time or third time.
Need him to stay healthy, big time.
Oh, I mean, without a doubt. I want to look at his. Okay, so he's played a lot of banged up games too throughout his career. So he hasn't missed a ton of games. He played 15, 16, 14 games. 8 games in 2020, 14, 15, 16, 15, and then 11 games last year. So it seems like he's been hurt and missed a lot of games. I know he's played through a lot of injuries as well, maybe playing through pain and not 100%. It feels like he's missed more games than that throughout his career, but most of those seasons he's only missed a game or 2 or 3. Yeah, tight end's a need, Croc. Like, the more I look at it, it's like no Kittle makes a huge difference. And I don't know that you're going to find a guy that was going to replace George Kittle anyway, but seeing how the 49ers run game went last year, you don't fix that by drafting a backup to Christian McCaffrey.
No, the 49ers definitely find they have a couple of positions where they feel like they can patch it up. And it seems like O-line and tight end.
Yeah, interior line.
They put a lot of resources in draft capital at a lot of the other positions. Just throughout the draft. But then they say, well, crap, we drafted Kamala too, and you didn't like
that. Well, maybe this was like that because they liked some tight ends, and these guys all went. So, are you all right?
Yeah.
Earthquake something? I thought so. I thought your desk was about to fall over. So it's good that they didn't reach for a bad tight end like they did in another good tight end class that year when they drafted Cam Latu, but there was a run previously on the tight ends. So they had they basically started a new run and got a guy from a wrong tier, but drafted him in the 3rd round, and he should have been drafted much later, or apparently not at all. So it's a good thing they didn't do that and force a tight end that was not a good tight end. But man, I was Dallin Bentley, 7th round. He was still there. Obviously, they didn't have a 7th round pick to use, but man, I might have taken him over Jaden Duggar. And I know Jaden Duggar has some athleticism, but so does Dallin Bentley. In fact, Dallin Bentley ran a better 40 time than Jaden Duggar did. And so I might have gone that route. So I think it'd be difficult for Jaden Duggar to make the roster, whereas a do-it-all tight end would have been real nice for the San Francisco 49ers. But there you go. You can't build it all in the draft. The draft is not for immediate need. I think that's what free agency is for. I think one of those names we just mentioned might end up a San Francisco 49er later in the summer. Let us know who you think the 49ers should target, or if they shouldn't target anybody at tight end in free agency. They did have old friend and former undrafted tight end Mason Pline on the tryout circuit at rookie minicamp, so he was there as well. Let us know at BD Peacock, at Coach Crocky in the YouTube comments, and Croc and I back tomorrow. We're going to keep breaking down more of these undrafted free agent rookies and getting you ready for OTAs in the next phase and training camp all summer long, every day right here, Locked On 49ers.